got a guy
What a
like that, that's built
shot.
like that, the 6'4", that you got to translate and all that.
They got Jordan Davis last season. They bring Fletcher Cox back in the Philly. So I'm sitting there like, we need to put something on this offensive line to combat that. What's going on, and welcome back, everybody. We are going to be talking around the league in this episode. A couple of things going on, but not too much. It's that dry time of the season, and you had mentioned beforehand that you had some Chase Claypool news you wanted to share with us.
Oh yeah, man. Just want to touch base on him in general. Like reports coming out now that the Chicago Bears are very unhappy with him. And not just on the field, but off the field. So that says a lot. I don't know if it's him not grasping the playbook, but then even on the field, this is a guy who you just traded your second round pick, and this is not your normal second round pick. Obviously, this is technically a first round pick. With the 32nd pick. And then seeing what the Steelers was able to do with that, getting a Joey Porter Jr. in there, looking at that in hindsight, we don't know how that would play out. But a year later, man, just giving that pickup and getting the Claypool in there, I just think, man, that's bad. That's not what you want to hear out of a young guy like that, a guy that you still wanted to pay. You don't have to pay him yet, but just to get that pickup for nothing, I just think that says a lot, about him in general, man. It's early, man, and he hasn't been able to come in there and impress nobody, and hasn't been able to turn no heads. We can all agree that last year, the season he had when he went over there, it wasn't nothing that made us believe like, hey, this was the answer. Obviously, the Chicago Bears also went out there and got a DJ Moore, but I'm willing to bet when they got Claypool, they got him with the idea of maybe he could have been a potential number one receiver.
Right.
But now, like, where does that put him in that offense? And obviously in the future, I think they got a new regime over there. I know Ryan Pohl is still over there, but yeah, it just seems like they not hanging their hats on anybody right now. They're trying to get this right.
No, and just looking at it from the outside, like from afar, if you're a Chicago fan today, would you rather have Joey Porter Jr. or Chase Claypool? So it does seem like,
Yeah,
Pittsburgh kind of fleeced him on this one. And if there's one thing we know, man, Pittsburgh understands the wide receiver room. So the fact that they were willing to move off of him for a second round pick, which at the time they didn't know was the 32nd pick. You know what I mean? That could have been pick 50, whatever.
yeah.
So it did work out in their favor. But leading into this season with the Chicago Bears, man, you got Justin Fields coming into year 3. You mentioned some of his weapons. He's got DJ Moore, a Chase Claypool. We don't know where he's going to land in the depth chart. You got Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet. Talk to me a bit about how you feel about Justin Fields headed into to year 3.
Oh, I think he's up for a huge year. Kind of like, I think even before, everything transpired, I was definitely very high on Fields. I really thought he should have went number 2 in that pick, that draft. I didn't see it in Zach Wilson. I always thought he was generally up there with Trevor Lawrence. But you hear, this season, but this offseason, he's working out with Michael Vick. He looks great. He's looked phenomenal. They say he's throwing dots. And let me tell you, with the rushing ability that he already has, if he's throwing how he's throwing, like they saying he is, he's passing the eye test and he has the weapons that he has, I think he could be up for a huge year. And a lot of people feel like generally like this season that statistically he could be better than Trevor Lawrence starting this year.
So coming out of that draft, I was huge on Justin Fields. Obviously, we had Trevor Lawrence. He was like the Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning type caliber coming out. That
Prototype.
the one that they can't miss pick, and
Right.
everybody else had question marks. To me, the one with the least question marks outside of Lawrence was Fields. And I didn't see him going to the Jets because the Jets do stupid stuff. But the fact that Atlanta passed him up for Kyle Pitts blew me away because he's from there. They need a quarterback, and he's still, given his stats the last 2 years, better than the quarterbacks that they have in Atlanta. So that still throws me for a loop. But looking at him and Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence side by side, I wrote down a couple of stats. They Fields has played 27 games to Lawrence's 34, and pretty much Lawrence has been a little more available. But completion percentage wise, we're not that far off. Fields is sitting at 59, Lawrence at 62. So for the people saying that Fields is inaccurate, you kind of got to say the same thing about a Trevor Lawrence. It's not that far off. Yards, passing yards, there's a big gap there, but there's also a 7-game gap.
Yeah.
Um, touchdowns, the same gap. Interceptions. How many interceptions would you guess Fields to have coming into year 3 and Lawrence coming into year 3?
With Phil, I mean, off the top of my head, I don't know. I know that first year Trevor Lawrence played, it was very heavy. It was a lot of them.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously the improvement he had the next year. I would say probably like Fields, maybe like sitting around like 25, Trevor Lawrence maybe 30. I'm
So
leaning.
it's 21 and 25. They're very close to each other
Okay.
in those numbers. So you were headed the right way. Sacks, Fields gets sacked a lot. He's been sacked 91 times in 2 years. Lawrence only 59 times. But 59 is still that's a lot of sacks. But Fields plays behind an awful offensive line. Carries wise, Fields has almost 100 more carries in 7 less games, which is kind of expected
Yeah.
along with about another 1,000 yards. My problem with Fields though is that 91 sacks and 13 fumbles, man. He's got to hold on to the football, but I do think in year 3 there is a strong possibility that we see a lot more out of Justin Fields.
Man, listen, I'm gonna shoot it straight, man. Justin Fields is a beast. Like, and I seen him first, up close and personal, in that Dallas game. Like, I was seeing it, you would see the highlights, whatever, but just watching him, um, I think it's crazy. Like you hear the speed, but when you see the speed,
Right.
it's a lot different. Like this guy in the open field is electric, man. And like what the hell is he working out with Michael Vick for? you know what I mean?
Exactly. The most
That's
electric guy.
the most electric guy, right? But I'm sitting on it like, man, he's already like they talk about Hurts, and we've seen the type of leap that Hurts was, was able to do in this past year. I think Fields can do something similar to it, man. And we've seen what Lawrence was able to do. You get him some weapons over there. You got a coach over there, and Doug Peterson, that kind of knew what he wanted to do. Settled him down a little bit, put him some weapons. We'll see what he's able to do with Kelvin Ridley this year. But he was able to make that leap. Same for Josh Allen and so many of those other guys that you see kind of just shoot off. You know what I mean? I think Phil's the same thing. The big thing for me is last year, like you spoke about, he had no offensive line at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He was a guy that was, running around. He did all he could to make the plays that he made, and he made those plays. And they wasn't competitive because of the defense. They damn sure wasn't competitive because of the offensive line. And we all knew they had to go out there and get these weapons for a reason. So I think when you kind of take all those things into account, I think Justin Fields, he's kind of put those on. He put them on his back, you know what I mean? And it was competitive because of the things that he was able to do with his legs. So just looking at it, if he can get that arm, going and another year of just kind of seeing it, knowing what I'm gonna do, letting it rip with the weapons that he now has, man, it's got a limit. It really is.
I think too with Chicago, I don't see them being a playoff contender, but I also don't see them picking in the top 5 this coming season. I think I can see them winning, like 6 to 8 games. And a lot of people are saying that they run the ball a lot and they don't really give Fields the opportunity to throw the ball. But why would you even give him the opportunity to throw the ball when you know he's just
Thanks.
going to get smashed in the pocket? So you go get Darnell Wright, who I think could emerge as the best offensive lineman in this draft class.
Right.
And you put another weapon around him in DJ Moore to give him the opportunity to grow. Because he may not even need to grow. Like he could be there. He just didn't have the ability or the capability or the time to operate like, Justin Fields can operate.
I mean, I agree. I wouldn't be surprised if they was to make the playoffs. It's crazy. I mean, Minnesota, do they take a step back? Detroit, I expect them to continue where they're going. I think it's on the upswing for them. Green Bay, I think they're taking a step back. And as we all know, there's an extra team that can make these playoffs. Maybe, just maybe, like the Bears are competitive. Philly struggled with beating them last year.
Mm-hmm.
With Dallas, they hung in there for a while. The scoreboard said one thing, but it was close.
Yeah.
So they're competitive. The defense is not as bad as everybody wants to believe. You lose a Roquan, and surprisingly, like it wasn't like a big fall off in anything. They got your man that was in there. They also was able to get TJ Edwards in there as well. So hey, let's see, man. But outside of that, man, I do think Fields, man. I'm very high on him. I think he'd be up for a huge year. Let's just talk about some of the QB updates. Like I ain't going to talk too much in depth about it. We'll just kind of flow through there and just get through it and see what's going on. So around the league, first off, Malik Willis. So I'm hearing he's showing a lot of improvement over there in Tennessee. This is a guy who was thrown into the fire. I don't think he should have been thrown into a fire. We all knew he should have waited. But it's interesting to see that he has like had the improvements and he's actually outperforming Will Levis, who a lot of people was high on this year. I wasn't, but how do you feel about that first and foremost?
With the Tennessee quarterback room, I don't know what to believe. I don't think Malik Willis is a starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't. I think there was a lot of room for improvement there. And I would say I think Tannehill's probably still the best quarterback on that roster. But if he is outperforming Will Levis, that's another problem that you have on your hands because you have spent a second round pick on Will Levis. So if you have a third round bust and a second round bust and an aging Ryan Tannehill,
Yeah,
now where are you at in Tennessee, man? I thought, for Tennessee, that they should have made a move at the quarterback position in free agency. They've got a nice team around them, but they're like at the tail end of it. They'll win games with Mike Vrabel, but that's an old offensive line. That's an old defense. They're not that young of a team. They gave up AJ Brown for nothing.
pennies for sure.
So no, I don't even know what to think about Tennessee. I think there's some disorganization going on over there.
And I think this, like you said, it's the last year. What I mean, I think for sure, I think Derrick Henry will spend his last year over there. If he's not dealt, what I mean, prior to the trade deadline and anything like that. And I think for real, the best thing to do right now is just kind of cut the band-aid off on Ryan Tannehill. I think you still can compete in that division, but I think right now, with the Texans getting their franchise quarterback, with the Colts also possibly getting their franchise quarterback, these teams are already one step ahead of you as far as like the future. So if you are leaning towards the future, yeah, I think you go ahead and I see what these young guys got, because if not, you might have to pivot fast. Um,
Exactly.
uh, as far as other things, we just talked about Anthony Richardson. I mean, I heard he's another guy. He's over there turning his early. A lot of people felt like he would struggle fast on the ball. Now, I mean, we all see the highlights of him like thrown into the nets and I mean, things like that. I don't take too much from that. I mean, everybody in shorts and I mean, jerseys is not the real thing. I don't think they're playing at full speed. But I think the biggest thing that stand out to me is him like grasping the playbook and actually being ahead of the curve. And I think that's big. What I mean? So I don't know what to expect from Anthony Richardson like day one, but I do like his prospects and where he could be. What I mean? Like mid season and going to next year for sure.
One thing I know for sure, when high school, I used to wet those nets up in warm ups, man. Like
Yeah,
anybody can do that. But with Anthony Richardson, I think, character wise, like we just keep hearing everything positive. Like character wise, he's staying back to help clean when he doesn't have to. His head is in the playbook. Like he's doing everything right to make a name for himself off the field. And I want to know, can that translate onto the field? Because in Florida, man, he wasn't the best quarterback on the field most games. And in Florida, you play a lot of heavy competition, but he was one of the most athletic guys on the field. Accuracy wise, it wasn't all there, but if he can improve on that, man, similar to a Justin Fields or even a Daniel Jones, Daniel Jones is a freak athlete with an improving arm.
yeah.
If Anthony Richardson's arm can catch up, he will be in business. But I think college, he sat right around 50% completion percentage. And that doesn't just improve when you get to the NFL. It gets harder in the next level.
Oh yeah. Like the throwing lanes and as fast as these guys moving, I mean he has that speed, but hey, look, you got guys like Michael Parsons and guys running 4.4 and 4.5s too. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just being able to run and being the fastest guy on the field it kind of changes, you know what I mean? But I will say this. He seems to have an offense coordinator over there that knows how to use him. If anything, if he does start day one, I think he has somebody that kind of will understand his strengths, hide his weaknesses a little bit, and it may not be so bad, man. It might just give him time to at the same time. Now, Jimmy
Sure.
G. Now, obviously he wasn't around the OTAs. We had the news that he had a foot injury, he's rehabbing, what's going on with him. Now we hear, what I mean, obviously he's could potentially return for training camp. So I know the Raiders fans, our fingers are still crossed just a little bit. I know it's early. But it seems like he could be there right now. It's Brown Hoyer's show until he comes back. Any thoughts on Jimmy G?
I think with the Jimmy G situation that the San Francisco, I think I might have hit on this before, but the San Francisco doctors had one thing in mind, and then the Vegas doctors got a hold of him and they worked out a plan from their point of view to get him where they need him to be. But in the medical field, anything is possible. But I think going into it, like, yeah, there was in his contract that he was injured and blah, blah, blah. But I think they had a lot of optimism with their medical staff in order to get him right. But if they don't, bro, the Raiders are in big trouble because they passed up on all the quarterbacks and kind of put their eggs in one basket with Jimmy Garoppolo. And that could potentially become a nightmare.
Oh yeah, and let's not act like they're the youngest team. You got a lot of veterans over there. Devontae Adams, Jacobs. You got a defense that still has a ton of holes. So they're moving as if they're ready to win now, but I'm not sure they are. And hey, let's just be honest. That division it's going to be a dogfight. So I mean, if he isn't the answer, then I think you gotta kind of have to go straight. Like, hey, Brady ain't coming to save it anytime
No.
soon. So uh, I wouldn't say rebuild, but they might be closer to that than they believe.